A very good morning to all the webinar attendees for the webinar title is Today's IT Compatible with Tomorrow's Social Media Consumer, presented by George Spalding. Before we start off, I'm Sudan from Managed Engine Services Plus Marketing. It gives me great pleasure to introduce to you all George Spalding, Executive Vice President, Pink Elephant, who will be going through the webinar. Before we start off, let me give a brief intro about George. George Spalding is the co-author of ITIL version 3 Continual Service Improvement Core Volume. George Spalding was awarded the 2012 Ron Muntz Lifetime Achievement Award from HDI and is one of the world's most insightful and engaging IT service management and support experts. In addition to his extensive commitment to improving the industry, George spent several years as a consultant to the White House on technical presentations and White House conferences. He also coordinated technical presentations for members of the President's Cabinet, the Smithsonian Institute, and the Federal Bureau of Investigation. George is an IT expert. He is a regular author of IT articles and white papers and is a presenter at global ITSM conferences and events. So let me pass on the control to George. George, you can take it from here.
Thanks, Sudan. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending where everybody is. Happy to be with you today. So the topic here is today's IT. The way we run IT today and the way that we use tools today is this compatible with the workforce that's coming up, and that these are the people who we're going to basically be serving and the people who are going to be using our services over the next 20 years. But obviously that's a very big horizon, so we'll just deal with the next few years. Maybe the next 2 or 3 years is really the only ones we care about. Okay, so first slide, please. So there are three basic generations in today's environment, in today's company. There's my generation, the baby boomer generation, the basically 50 to 65-year-olds, 49 to 67, but basically these are the people who, for the most part, are in management positions, mostly just because they've been there longer, if nothing else. And they have, one style. They grew up in one way, and they're being, I guess, forced in many cases to use technology. Now, myself, I was in technology, so as I got older, I was always at least current, if not in the forefront of some of the technological change. However, I'm not so sure that I currently would say that I am comfortable with Instagram and Flickr and Vimeo. I do a little Twitter. I do Facebook. I'm hip to that, but in reality, I watch my grandchildren, and they have a whole new language. They insert hashtags in their daily conversation. It's a very different way of communicating. Anyway, my children are in the Generation X. These are what I would call the digital immigrants. These are the mid-30s to mid-late 40s folks. And these people do indeed embrace technology. They do know how to use technology. They had to learn it at a later age. The high school and college was not very well attuned when my children went to it, to teaching the right stuff around technology. So my children went to high school, and the computer class that they could go to was not a keyboarding class or a communications class, but rather was a class in basic programming, which of course immediately turned them off to all things computers. Then we have this Generation Y, often referred to as the millennial generation, because they came of age as we flipped over into the new millennium, the year 2000. These are digital natives. These people have grown up. They never knew a world without really the internet. They never knew a world without email. They never knew a world without instant messaging. They're confused when you want to obtain music but you're not going to download it. You're going to go buy a CD. That doesn't make sense to them much. You download movies. Everything's digital. To as digital natives. They grew up within this digital world, speaking the digital language and understanding the digital way of being. And of course, my grandchildren are in this next generation, and that's just enough said. Okay, so most of my data, of course, is United States data, but I think much of this applies to the rest of the world. So next slide, please. So there's some metrics on these different generations that we need to look at. First of all three of them are in the workplace right now. They're working together side by side, some in management and leadership positions, some in entry-level positions, and somewhere in the middle. But this bottom group, this Gen Y, these millennials, is growing rapidly in the workforce, especially as the top end, the older people, exit or retire. So they were already at 21% of the workforce in 2006, and that growth is expected to continue at least through 2015. So this is a big deal. At the same time, the baby boomers, the bulk of the population in the past are getting older and older and older. And starting in around 2011, the baby boomers started turning 65 at about 10,000 people per day. So as this next group comes up, this global battle for talent was going to be pretty fierce, because not just the actual numbers of people, like the European Union's actually experiencing a decline in population, which for the most part is economically driven. People are saying, wow, it costs too much money these days, so I'm not going to have as many children, etc. But there's just going to be fewer people in Europe. There's the population in the U.S., while it continues to grow, is growing at a much slower rate. The population in Asia continues to grow. In China, in India, the population in Indonesia continues to grow at an amazingly fast rate, Pakistan as well. So we're going to start, as people get their economic house in order, the Great Recession of 2008, 2009 is put into the past. This baby boomer exodus is going to become quite pronounced. And it's not just going to be the top company, the top of the company, but the second, third, and fourth leadership positions are also in that age group, and they're going to go as well. So it's going to become quite interesting as we move forward with the Gen X and Gen Y generations beginning to take over the majority of the workforce. Next slide, please. So let's look at some quick highlights. So we got these three generations working together. I mentioned that 10,000 baby boomers a day, starting in the beginning of 2011, reached the age of 65, which makes them eligible for retirement in many cases. And certainly in the United States, when they reach 66, that means that they can retire and still receive full Social Security, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So 35 million Americans were 65 in the year 2000. 70 million Americans will probably be 65 by the year 2030. 65 or over, and that's going to be 20 or 25% of the population, and that's non-working, of course. They won't be working. So according to the 2010 census in the United States, the baby boomers were 38% of the workforce, and these are the digital immigrants that truly had to learn this digital language from square one. In the middle of their working career, computers came about, and suddenly they had to learn this. The Gen Xers, really the digital immigrants, they knew that language is native to them. They understand computers, but they're not as integrated or comfortable with it as the Gen Yers, the true digital natives. So this was from the 2010, that was 3 years ago. census, and they're already at 25%. Okay, next slide, please. So these Gen Yers are often what we call the millennials, and they are the future of our workforce. They're the future of our companies. They are a very different group than ones that we're used to seeing. They are the most socially and diversely tolerant generation. They have fewer prejudices. They've been taught as they grew up that not to be prejudiced. They've been much more inclusive in the way they were raised. They're more educated. More of them have gone to college than any previous generation. More technologically savvy, simply because they grew up with it. Though by technologically savvy, I do find that they still don't know what an infrastructure is if they're not geeks. But they're very comfortable with the consumer side of technology. They're comfortable with smartphones, comfortable with tablets, comfortable with just about everything that everyone is using these days. But they don't really know how it works. They don't know why something goes wrong or why it doesn't. But they're very comfortable using all the consumer stuff. So it still means that folks in IT are going to have a job, but mostly supporting infrastructure and not supporting end users. They are by far the most sheltered and structured generation in U.S. history. It has become less and less white, less and less Caucasian. So 1 in 3 is not a Caucasian in this younger generation. 1 in 4 comes from a single-parent home because the divorce rate has gone up. They are by far the fastest growing segment. They are the digital natives. Okay, next slide, please. A little humor on the Gen Y stuff. Why do they call Gen Y? Well, maybe I always thought it's because we should say they think, why should I get a job? Why should I leave home and find my own place? Why should I get a car when I can borrow yours, Mom and Dad? Why should I clean my room? Why should I wash and iron my own clothes when you're doing it for me, Mom? Why should I buy any food when I can eat out of your refrigerator in your pantry? Next slide, please. One cartoonist said it like this, very eloquently, when you look at the way some of these kids are dressed. Okay, next slide. So some generational traits. So the baby boomers grew up during the Vietnam War, civil rights movement, the Cold War with Russia, the women's liberation movement, some key shaping their lives in the 60s with JFK and Martin Luther King's assassination. It was the first generation where credit was okay as opposed to paying for everything by saving. Fitness, TV was everywhere, etc. From a technology perspective, it was used to do more work. You could get more work done because you had more technology. It wasn't in any way associated with the home or with entertainment. It was just work. Moving into the Gen X group, this is mid-30s to late 40s, they had the Persian Gulf War, AIDS was in there, corporate reduction in force, divorce rate went up, PCs were common, the internet hit its stride, video games were everywhere, and they wanted to be more balanced with their work and their home life, and I see this in my own children. They made decisions based on lifestyle, not on work. They made decisions about where they would live based on lifestyle, not on where they could get a job. From a technology standpoint, they use it more to attain that work and life balance, work-home balance. So then we get to the Gen Ys. They experienced 9/11, the Afghan-Iraq War, school shootings. They're big. Smartphones are everywhere. They're texting. They have social networks all over the place. Laptops, personal mobility. They view technology as mobile, not as going to an office, sitting at a desk. They view all technology as mobile. So from a technology standpoint, their view is that it is fully integrated into their life in every way, into their friends, into their social and society, into what they do to play, into how they find places to play or eat or entertain themselves, as well as work, email or whatever you might want to see. It's all part of their life from a technological standpoint. Next slide, please. So when we look at the characteristics of these generations, I'm not going to go through this whole thing. Let's look at some down there. So much more diverse. The work ethic, the boomers are driven. Gen X's are more balanced. The Gen Ys are determined that they're going to have a job or going to be able to support themselves. But their loyalty factor is not that great on one company to another. They move around a lot more. From a work life, or excuse me, from a relationship standpoint, the boomers tend to get personal gratification. I am working to make myself better, to get ahead myself. Whereas on the other side of the spectrum, the Gen Yers are much more likely to get involved in teams and be much more inclusive in the work and decision making. It's a much different way of working. Also, when they are involved in those teams, they tend to respect the boomers. If the boomers are the heads of the teams or the heads of departments, they will get more respect from the Gen Yers than a younger Gen Xer will. I don't know why. It's just because they see them as a father or mother figure, perhaps, but it does tend to work that way. Down in the work-life balance, work is the key driver and was in my life. More work-life balance in the Gen Xers, and complete flexibility is expected by the Gen Yers. Don't tell me to come in from 9 to 5 into the office. Tell me what work you want me to do, and I'll get it done. I'll get it done on my own time, within the deadline, using my own devices, with my own personal devices, my own personal applications. All of that will be mine. It'll be a very different way of doing things. Next slide, please. So this is all nice, but what does it do for us, and why are we talking about it today? Because it's about communication styles and who wants to hear what when. So for the baby boomers, it's going to be face-to-face or telephone communication, maybe such a thing as a fax confirmation, lots of email for baby boomers, lots and lots of emails, lots of meetings, but not necessarily texting on your cell phone. Whereas the Gen Xers will be, let me pick my mode of communication, but I'm still very into email, cell phone. I will use texting and things like that. The millennials, they don't want to know from telephone calls. It's all about texting, instant messaging, social networks. Email is considered something you use only for work or maybe for school, but it's not the way they communicate with their friends. Next slide, please. So once again, we're going to need multiple channels of communication to address the 3 different generational elements that are in our workforce today. So when we set up a service desk, when we create communication elements, whether it's a service catalog, whether it's a service desk for people to call into, or email or text or chat, how do we communicate to these different generations of people, and what kind of channels of communication do we create that are attractive to them? So boomers are going to want a live communication with an actual human being. They're going to want to talk to somebody on the phone. They're going to be willing to wait for that or set up a time for a callback. The Gen Xers will want to talk to people, or they'll use official channels of self-help, like a self-help portal, maybe an FAQ, and they'll feel like that's okay. The Gen Yers will ask anyone in the world for help. And I mean that. I mean, they'll ask for help on Google. So they'll go out to Google, they'll tell them their incident or whatever's going wrong with their computer or their smartphone or whatever it is. They'll get, 15,000 or 150,000 or 1.5 million hits on what they have put in there. And then they'll start to go through that and see how things are going and whether that works or not. But they may waste a lot of time doing it, But in truth, what they will definitely do is they'll ask anyone. So it can be on any network, on any social network. Sometimes this may be bad because we may find them advertising our dirty laundry or things that are going wrong within the company or the IT structure on public sites, and that would not be good. Next slide, please. So if, as I see more and more IT departments out there refining their communication strategy and their service strategy in terms of help and help desk, service desk, they're moving more and more, slowly but surely, to self-service. And there's no question that the Gen Yers, the young ones, are leaning that way themselves. They actually prefer to go and find a solution of their own on their own. And they'll ask anybody, but they prefer to do it themselves, and they're used to doing it themselves, and they don't really want to involve anyone else. Because when they do involve someone else, the service desk may be very slow, it may be process bound by all these very stringent and mature processes. Also, there may be a script, it may seem very formal, it may seem autocratic. They just don't want to do it. The boomers will do that. They'll wait for people on the phone. The Gen Xers will start. But the Gen Yers want to do it on their own, and they don't want, they'll try other solutions. They'll just try them. No testing, nothing involved. They may delete data as a result of it. So you may end up getting them making a given situation worse by trying all these fixes on their own. Okay, next slide, please. So how does this affect us today in the world of IT and ITSM, IT service management? As we in IT keep designing and refining our ITSM solutions, our communication strategies, and our self-service capabilities, we have to understand that there's three completely distinct constituencies that we serve in the workforce. Baby boomers all the way through Gen Yers, and each one of them has their own unique requirements and biases as to how they want to be communicated with and what they will, and their level of patience, if you will. In other words, if we try and send people to a self-service portal, it better be one great self-service portal, because anyone, whether it's baby boomer, Gen X, Gen Y, anyone going to a self-service portal, if it doesn't resolve their problem or lead to a resolution or isn't in some way entertaining or compelling, it's not going to work. They're not going to go back. In other words, the whole reason people go to self-service is to provide, in some cases for the young ones, better service or give them another channel. But in many cases, it's to save money, because a self-service fix is less than half the cost of a live human being fixing the issue. So if self-service saves the IT department money, that's a good thing. But only if the people go there, only if they actually find it to be helpful and compelling, which means that we need to start investing in self-service and the whole self-service idea, not knowledge articles, but videos, how-to videos, things like that. The simple fact of these three generations is that for the next few years, this will prove a pervasive influence in both the way we manage our organizations and the way we manage IT as we move through those next 3 or 4 years. Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to turn this over to Andrew with ManageEngine.
Thank you, George, for that wonderful social IT webinar. Before we take on questions, I would like to introduce to you all Andrew from Service Desk Plus Product Consultant to just give a brief intro about ManageEngine Service Desk Plus. So over to Andrew.
Thank you, Sid. To give you an insight on ManageEngine, we are one of the divisions of Zoho Corporation. Zoho Corporation has 3 great brands, Zoho, ManageEngine, and WebNMS. We started in the year 1996 with WebNMS, which is a telecom software division of Zoho Corporation. The WebNMS framework has become the preferred element management system, and network management system framework provider with developments in every Tier 1 carrier in the world. Right? Even now, we are the #1 player in the segment. Then we have the Zoho.com, which offers a comprehensive suite of award-winning online business productivity and collaboration applications. Today, Zoho.com has launched 25+ online applications from CRM to mail, office suites, project management, invoicing, web conferencing, and more. And then we have the Manage Engine, which offers simple, easy-to-use IT enterprise management products at a price that every business can afford. It is thoughtfully built with SMBs in mind and eventually scales for larger businesses as well. Manage Engine has multiple help desk softwares in the Service Desk Plus family, and this gives you a luxury to select the one that suits your need. These softwares are available with integrated asset and project management capabilities, and it's built over the ITIL framework. Service Desk Plus family of products is used by over 25,000 customers across 186 countries, and it's available in 29 different languages. Service Desk Plus is available in premises as well as an on-demand version, and is also available in 3 different flavors. We have a standard edition, which has the help desk module. We have a professional edition, which has help desk with the asset management capabilities. And then we have the enterprise edition, which contains the help desk, asset management, and the ITIL modules like incident, problem, changes, service catalog, CMDB, and also the project management. To talk more about social IT and Service Desk Plus, we are working on the integration with IT Pulse, which is the industry's first private social network, which is exclusively built for IT teams. IT Pulse engages and socializes IT teams by establishing a one-stop cascading wall for real-time display of IT health and collaboration in a secure and fun environment. When speaking about industry's first, I'd also like to mention that we believe in bringing in unique features in the product that no other competitor has. One such latest addition is one-of-a-kind voice-based iPhone app. For more information on Service Desk, you can visit our website, which is www.servicedeskplus.com, or reach us directly at the number displayed in the slide. Over to you, Sid.
Thank you, Andrew. Let's move on to some questions which we have received. So the question which you have received for George is there a difference in the attention span of the generations in the types of communications that keeps them interested?
Yes, there is a dramatic difference in the attention span of the generations. There's no question that the younger group has a shorter attention span and needs to be, we're discovering at Pink that they need to be addressed differently in terms of how they're trained, not just how a product or a self-service portal would be created. There would be more videos, more use of YouTube, and shorter snippets of training and knowledge. We find them that from a training standpoint, that's the way they like to be trained, in short little snippets, and then they can go off on their own, or that they have a 5-minute to 15-minute snippet, and then they can do something else. So yes, there's no question that the attention span is shorter in the younger folks, and also in the way that we use that shorter attention span. It has to be a lot more entertaining, a little bit of gamification, more video, less text. Not even graphs or pictures will help. It's got to be video, moving video.
Thank you, George. There's one more question which we have received. I think it's for Andrew, and the question goes like, please elaborate on the integration capabilities of the ITIL processes in the enterprise edition of Service Desk Plus. So Andrew, I think you can answer that.
Yes, Service Desk Plus supports ITIL processes out of the box, and also supports customizations to meet your specific needs. Service Desk Plus captures the entire workflow, right from the creation of an incident to how it can be effectively handled as a problem. The solution of a problem can be configured to go through a change management process before it actually gets implemented, and also the incident generated due to a change is captured, which completes the cycle. The CMDB module gives you a high-level view of the relationship between the CIs and the incident, problems, and changes associated to it. This helps you perform a root cause analysis or a risk analysis for the problem and change management respectively. And the large-scale change implementations can also be easily managed using the projects.
So I think that's the questions which you have received. The other questions we'll be mailing you soon via email. So we have actually posted a poll. So we would actually request all the attendees to participate in the poll and give their options, so that it would actually get us know what what's the case in your organization. So I've kept the polls open for you. You can leave in your feedback there. So once you're done, let me know. So thank you for taking your time and attending this webinar. We hope you have enjoyed this webinar. Have a great day.